Hey guys, my name is Marian, and like I said in the last video that we did, in these short videos I'm going to be talking about the workings of the oil and gas industry, especially the Nigerian oil and gas industry. Today we're going to be doing reserve estimation. That's basically trying to find out how much crude oil you have, particularly in an oil field, right? So reserve estimation is important because it helps a company make the right investment. They know if the reserves are actually quantifiable enough in large volumes enough to become profitable in the long run, because drilling operations, reservoir operations and production operations are very expensive, so you don't want to invest all that money to find out at the end of the day your net is zero. So basically, if you have, if you've done some sort of, you've got the license first of all, because the first thing to do is to get a license to either prospect for oil. And once the prospection is done, you've established that this particular area, for example the Niger Delta, contains oil and gas. The next step is to drill. So you get a license to drill, which is called the OML, oil mining license. So once the OML has been established, the company also needs to have an estimate of how much reserves are in that field that they own. So basically there's a simple formula, it's an arithmetic formula that is used to do volumetric estimation. Bear in mind that there are different modes of estimating oil and gas reserves. There's the depleted, it's called material balance equation. There's using of software, you can use petrol, but the volumetric is actually one of the easiest and is the one that you can use without actually going to drill. So it's easy to use. So with this formula is what we're going to be discussing today. Right, so the volumetric formula states that the amount, the stock tank oil initially in place, I don't know if you can see that, it says stock tank oil initially in place. Sometimes it's called the stock tank oil originally in place is equal to 7758. Forget this, I'll discuss why we use 7758, it's just a conversion factor, multiplied by AH. I'll discuss all these terms in a bit. The porosity, 1 minus saturation of water, and that is divided by the formation volume factor. Right, so here 7758 is basically a conversion of the acres, because your oil field is usually measured in acres. It's a field, right? So it's measured in acres, but this 7758 takes care of that conversion from acres to barrels, because your oil is measured in barrels. Right, now the A and the H is the formula for a volume. The volume of a cube is the area times the height, which is usually the length times the breadth times the height, right? So AH, because you're assuming that this oil field is an actual cube, right? So this is the porosity, because you're interested in the pore spaces in the rock. You're not interested in the entire rock sample. You're interested in those pore spaces that can actually hold oil and gas. And 1 minus saturation of water. The reason for this is because your reservoir tends, that's your oil field, or wherever your oil is stored, tends to be saturated with three fluids. It tends to be saturated with oil, with water, oil, and gas, right? Now, if we're doing this in percentages, this gives you 100% saturation, right? Now, we're interested in the area that is saturated with oil and gas. So, if we take our oil and gas, that means SO plus SG becomes 1 minus the saturation of water, which is what we have here, because we're interested only in the area that is saturated with oil and gas. And we're not using this part of the formula because this other area gives us just one unknown, so it makes it easier to calculate. Now, your formation volume factor, which is divided by the formation volume factor, is the factor that takes into account the amount of the crude oil that escapes as gas. Because I want to use a simple analogy. If you have, for example, a Coke bottle that you shake, once you shake it, it becomes under pressure, right? Because downhole, your reservoir is under a lot of pressure. So if you open a Coke bottle, what happens is that it explodes, right? The gas comes out like, bubbles. That's exactly what happens. So when you produce your oil, as it comes to the surface, part of it wants to escape as gas. Now this factor takes care of the part that escapes as gas, because you don't want to make a wrong estimate and find out that 50% of it has escaped as gas. So that's it for today, guys. See you in the next video.